Hey, what's up? Gary here. Today in the studio, I have got the new Line 6 Helix Stadium XL. This thing has been talked about for years and is a massive, massive upgrade in the hardware, the software, and the sonic capabilities of the Helix platform. Let's take a quick look at it. So let's touch on some high points of what I understand to be the differences from the previous generation of the Helix platform to the Stadium. One of the biggest is the Agoura modeling methodology, and apparently this is coming with a whole new reported higher fidelity, greater dynamic response, upgraded DSPs, all the hype words that you hear that essentially are supposed to mean that you're going to feel like you're playing real devices in a way that sound more full and dynamic and just have all of that range that you expect, especially when you do things like volume roll down and such, which I can tell you, spoiler alert, it does feel pretty good. I don't know that it's what has been promised necessarily, but it feels pretty dang good. DSPs and signal chain capacity, this is another really big one. So with, all of these generations of hardware getting faster and faster, stronger and stronger, that means that you're going to potentially be able to handle more devices. So one of the touted things here are the Stadium being able to support more of a robust signal chain than the previous generation of the Helix. Another big one that many people are already saying online. Obviously, I'm a little late to the party here, coming in a week or two after all the other streamers have come through. But modern UI and workflow upgrades. There's a lot of quality of life things that I think have started to happen with the Helix, which is pretty good. I'm trying not to give you all of my opinions immediately when I'm walking through this list, but the UI for the app, for the Helix Stadium app, could use some work in my opinion, but we'll come back to that. But overall workflow does feel familiar for the most part, which is cool. New tone shaping features. So one of the biggest things, and it's so silly to me that they called it this, but the Stadium is bringing a feature called hype, which, come on now, it's hype built on the feature called hype. That's inception of a troll to me. But at any rate, hype essentially is to give you the ability to get what can only be described as a more polished, kind of maybe slightly more mix-ready tone. And the more you drag hype from a bar 0 through 10, it's supposed to kind of give you this kind of over-the-top polishing that makes it sound more mix-ready. It's really interesting. I think, honestly, if you ask me what it's really doing under the covers, is it's knocking off some of the peaks and the valleys of your tone to really kind of take away some of those transients and give you a little bit more of a focused sound versus more of a raw, kind of transient feel that you would get off of a real amplifier, running without, say, a noise gate or something similar, where it would just feel really raw and kind of there. That's the only way I can really kind of describe hype. You do hear it. I definitely feel that it's making changes. I can hear the changes. In fact, I almost feel like when you're also boosting hype, you're getting more fidelity, which sometimes is good, right? If you're looking for that kind of tone. Other times it kind of takes away from that rawness, especially with, harder metal, to a point where, I don't know, I think it's going to be something you're going to have to use sparingly. Don't fall for the hype, so to speak, and put it to 10 everywhere. I think you're not going to love those results, but it is an interesting feature that I am definitely looking at kind of getting to know a little bit more and providing you some more feedback on. So let's see, what else? Modern rig integration. So I think this is something that gives you a little bit more of a modern feel. And really, in my opinion, what that translates to is the Helix floor models, especially with the XL, it feels a lot closer to some of the older designs that Line 6 have previously had. Like if you remember the older Stomp Box, and I'll try to find a picture and put it up next to me while I'm talking to this, the old Stomp Box style had the ability to have all of these little screens that basically looked like, almost like Boss stomps, right? But the little screens told you what they were and what the configuration was. And you could configure everything on the fly on this big foot pedal to make that happen. It was really pretty intuitive at the time. It was a neat concept. And they kind of strayed away from that and went a little bit of a different direction. And now I feel like the Stadium is kind of coming back with like a version 2, or maybe even 3, I guess at this point, if you count the kidney bean as being the first one, of that kind of feel when it comes to the stomp boxes and some of the labels. Now, you only get that on the XL. You actually have the little screens coming back to tell you what your different presets are and what you're clicking on, which is pretty cool. As well as, you know, that really nice high contrast OLED screen, which I got to tell you looks great. It is matte as well on top, so light isn't reflecting off of it and making it a challenge to be able to see if in a well-lit area, but it's also not too dim to a point where you can't see. It actually looks fantastic. And I got to tell you, the capacitive touch feels great. I am really impressed with the feel of that screen. Now, I am looking at immediately trying to pick up a screen protector, which I'm not going to lie to you, it's been kind of a challenge. Nobody's really making them yet, which on a device that's this expensive, kind of worries me. If I was to go gigging with this right now, I would be pretty concerned not having a screen protector. So that's something that does need to happen for me to actually feel a little bit more comfortable taking this out of my studio right now. But I do plan to. I actually really do want to put this thing through its paces. I'm enjoying it so far. But again, don't want to get ahead of myself. Let's keep going here. I think the last thing is size and portability. Giving you a difference between the Stadium and the Stadium XL in size and what you're looking for. And, you know, I think at the end of the day, the weight of this device versus some of its other competition is actually kind of surprising. The weight of the XL, I think, is around 6 pounds. I'll correct myself at the bottom if I'm inaccurate here. But when I pick up my pedal board, my full pedal board with my FM3, and compare it to the weight of the XL, it's significantly more. Now, I do have other devices on there, but I actually unbolted my FM3 and held them side by side. And the FM3 is almost exactly the same weight as the Stadium, which was interesting because the Stadium is larger, you know, in footprint, but it has a fair amount more I/O. Not crazy amounts, because I mean the FM3 is pretty well kitted, but it does have more in there with less weight, which is pretty cool. And especially having that larger screen on top of it, it's interesting, the weight difference. So Stadium XL is definitely feeling pretty decent. And they also made this really, really cool backpack, which I did pick up the backpack. I'll show you the picture here. It's pretty dang neat. Now, would I say that that's great if you're like a heavy touring musician? Absolutely not. You're gonna need a real, you know, rig box to be able to keep that, a road box to be able to make that happen in a way that you're gonna feel comfortable. Because again, it's an expensive device. You want to make sure you're taking care of it the best you can. And while I do think this device feels rugged, I also think there's enough technology with screens and such that aren't as rugged. And I think that's one other thing that I will call out on the hardware side that I might need to ding Line 6 slightly on with this XL. The expression pedal. The expression pedal, the actual arm itself, so when you're expressing the pedal, right, and going back and forth, the arm doesn't feel that sturdy. It clicks sometimes and feels like it's just not quite as well developed as it could be. I would be a little concerned using that night after night that there might be a failure point in a cheaper piece of plastic there. Now, I'm going to dive in a little deeper. I'm actually going to inspect it in a little while. So I'll have an update for that later on in other videos to give you a final verdict on whether or not I think it's actually a problem or if it's just a personal taste of feel to me, because I'm a weird person. I'm very tactile and I want everything to feel over provisioned basically when it comes to things like that, because I just gain a little bit of confidence in feeling like something's roadworthy when I think I could just run it over with a tank and be okay. That foot pedal, that's not quite where I would want it to be to feel that way. But it does respond well, and it is fairly tight too. So I feel like I can really articulate, you know, an exact, you know, placement of it versus it being like too floppy or anything like some of the others that I've experienced. Which, by the way, for myself, say with the Fractal FM9, I'm not as big a fan of that expression pedal. So there's that. Another feature I wanted to call out that I thought was actually pretty cool. It's a different kind of approach to dialing in amps and pedals. Is the focus mode that's new to the Helix Stadium. And it's something that's kind of fun. I don't know that advanced users would use it as much, but essentially it allows for you to kind of dial in a tone, even if you don't really know what you're doing. If you don't really know how to dial in an amp or dial in a specific pedal, you can actually use this kind of visual mode with the touchscreen and actually have some like predetermined kind of sweet spots that are depicted by the snapshots in each one of the presets that you can access. And when you pull up that device, right, you essentially can drag your finger on the screen towards any of the four corners or the center of the screen itself, and that actually is altering the parameters of that device, be it an amp, be it a pedal, whatever that is. It has the ability to, in real time, change all of those different effects. So it almost kind of takes away some of the idea of, you know, visually just staring at the screen, either on the device or on, you know, the Stadium app, and making those parameter changes, and instead gets you to actually listen more, listen to what you're hearing. Do you like that sound, right? And it's kind of something that's a little refreshing, because I think we've kind of moved to a point now where most of guitar players are really hyper focused on just dialing in those specific parameters. I know exactly where I want to go and how I want to do it all the time. And that's fine. You know, I'm not discrediting that at all. I think you know, naturally we're starting to get a little bit more accustomed to dealing with these things that are abstracts of the real hardware, right? But it's interesting to be able to have this as something, especially for folks that maybe don't know as much, or this is their first major experience with something like this. It's kind of cool. So I wanted to show you this really briefly. So at this point I have, let's see, this is a Rev 120 Purple amp. And if I click this focus mode button right here, you'll see that now I have this kind of cool picture of the amp itself, right? And in the corners, you have like two scoops and waffled cone and chunky monk and dirty spoon and super crunch. I love these names. Fantastic. These are all different kind of like snapshots, right, that are saved for this specific device. So what's really interesting is in real time, as you drag your finger around the screen, I'm sure you can probably see this at the bottom here if you pay attention, it's actually altering the parameters of the amp as I drag around. So this really gives you that ability to just be, you know, sitting here playing your guitar and just dragging your finger around on the screen here, interacting in a way to find a tone that suits you and what you want to play simply by interacting this way. I just think that's such a neat concept versus just, you know, versus say, for example, like the FM3, right? That experience is very different. There's a huge learning curve. And when you're starting to interface with the, especially on the device itself, interfacing with parameters, you know, you really need to know kind of what you're doing. All of those dials are going to make a tonal difference, and everything you're doing needs to be precise and has to be done with purpose, because you almost have too many options at times, especially if you're a new user. There's a huge learning curve to understand that. With this, you don't really need to understand most of these parameters. You can just figure out what sounds good to you and be able to start dialing it in, and it makes it a little bit more accessible to do that, which I think is really cool. So that's with an amp. Now let me try to pull up a pedal really quick. So this is a Horizon Precision Drive. Okay, and if I click focus the same way, now you can see we actually have a picture of the drive, which, by the way, this is pretty awesome. I really honestly appreciate the fact that you have these kind of cool, you know, high definition pictures of the devices. It's a nice touch. But anyways, yeah, smack, clarity, subtle, boost, just drag around on the screen. Tight is the one in the middle here. You just drag it around and you can see it's just altering those parameters to suit whatever, you know, kind of defaults are in there. So this is focus mode. I think it's a really neat addition to a modeling and profiler. Last small thing, since I mentioned it earlier, I was going to quickly show you the Line 6 branded Helix Stadium XL backpack. Now I feel like a real fanboy. But in all seriousness, I got the package for it. It wasn't that bad. I think I got it like $50 off, but I think it's like retail $250. That's really subjective on whether or not you think that's worth it for a backpack. All I can tell you is the materials do feel really solid. It feels like it's a water resistant, maybe rejecting material here. Feels pretty quality. The triple stitching on most of it, which is nice. It's got a handle here as well, so you can carry it sideways. It's also got a handle up top here. The armoring feels really solid. It almost reminds me of like the Icon, if you do any of the road bike, riding or anything like that, the Icon gear. It feels very rugged and sturdy, kind of like their kind of material, especially when it comes to some of the padding here, which does feel really nice. So that's pretty cool. The top rolls down as well, which is pretty nifty. So if you're doing any hiking with this, or maybe like crosstown commuting, if you walk or in a city or anything like that, and it's raining, you won't have rain roll directly into your bag, which is kind of nice. I know there's plenty of bags you could get that would help support that, but it's a nice touch. So I think they did a pretty decent job here. There's pockets everywhere. One other thing that's kind of interesting to call out too, right here, I don't know if you can see this very well or not, but on the front, there's a little bump, and it's actually a USB-C port. And there's a cable that travels up in here to a USB-C connector that's on the inside of this part of the backpack here. So if you have like a bank, like battery bank or something similar, and you want to get a charge on your phone, or maybe like do some other kind of distro off of it, you can totally do that right here too. So pretty nifty. At any rate, enough about backpacks and all this other nonsense. I hope you appreciated this video. It's been great to be back. Again, kind of my apologies for not being here for a few months. I've really focused heavy on the band. I still am. I love my band and all of the different projects that we're working through. But I would like to get back to making some more content. This is a lot of fun for me, and I miss you guys. I miss hanging out. I miss being able to get in here and monkeying with things a little bit more, and doing some of that. In fact, I think what I'm going to do in this next year is maybe bring a little bit more content to do some gear dives with things that we're doing in the band. So that way you can kind of see some of the amazing things that I think we've put together. I might be biased, but we've built an entire multiple versions of IEM racks. We've got tons of automation with lighting and MIDI control and all kinds of backtracking and such. And our entire show is heavily automated, and I would love to be able to tell you more about it if you're geeking out like me and want to know that. So plenty of content ideas for this next year, including working with some vendors to potentially get some boutique gear coming through my studio to show all of you fine people as well, which I would really like to be able to do. So look forward to more content. Definitely please subscribe, come back. I appreciate everything that you folks have done for me so far, and to all my subscribers that I've unceremoniously kind of let down the last few months by not making content. I'm sorry about that. I would like to make more. At any rate, I'm going to be bringing you more content specifically on the Line 6. I'm going to spend a couple of weeks during vacation break with it, kind of getting to know it a little bit better, putting it through some more paces. I'll come back with a few more deep dive videos, very similar to my Quad Cortex, Nano Cortex video chain. And yeah, I'll try to make some more content on those devices as well. I know that there's been large revisions. We got V2 of their modeling and captures and all this other good stuff, which I have dove into, but I've just not had time to make content for you folks. And again, I'm going to try to make more time if I can. So thank you. Happy holidays to all of you if you don't see me again in another video before the end of the year. And I'll see you.